All right. Good morning, guys. Well, it's morning over here, and if it's, um, I guess I'll just say good day. Good day to you guys. So I'm going to be trying something a little different. This is going to be a dream analysis on myself, and it's gonna be a bit personal, but it's enough personal that I'm comfortable with sharing. And I've chosen a dream that's I'm comfortable with sharing without it revealing too much. So I was hesitant on calling this a Freudian analysis of my dreams, but there is some. I do use association to really break down my dream. But I've noticed that in the course of attempting to analyze and interpret my dreams, and I've had some practice using some of Jung's ways of interpreting dreams. I can't really determine if I was successful with those, but I know that in my own experience of attempting to interpret my dreams, that I tend to give more precedence to the affect, to the affect in the dream. It seems like I feel that when I interpret my dreams, it's better to pay attention to the affect one feels within the dream, because in my opinion, it seems that the affect itself seems to dramatize the whole scenario, the whole dream. And sometimes getting caught up in the details gets a little distracting, but they're good. But I think once you catch the affect, then you can start asking questions about, what am I angry about? What am I fearful about? Once you start making those prodding questions, I think the dream becomes a little easier to break down, and then you can start paying attention to the details. So I like to go from general and then details. So let's get on with the dream, right? What was the dream that I had? This was actually something that occurred on July 5th. So this was yesterday, actually. And okay, so the dream starts like this. I'm randomly, the setting is I'm in the woods with a friend, and my friend is telling me that this direction forward is on the way to his house. So I guess that I've gone to visit him, and we're going to his parents' house. And I guess they live in the woods, very isolated in the woods. And so the very interesting thing that occurs on the way to his house is that there's snakes placed everywhere. And it seemed like almost every step I took, there was a snake, and they would chase us. And so we started running. And the thing is that him and I got separated. And I wasn't sure if I was actually running in the right direction towards his house, because the first instinct I chose was to go to the house, run towards the house, and that's where I would feel safe. And but I think I did this thing where I was running, as I was running away from the snakes, and he was running too. I was able to turn to my left side and kind of catch a glimpse of him on the opposite side of me, and he was running in the same direction too. So I felt comfortable in that sense that, okay, we're still running in the same direction, as long as I kind of keep an eye on him as I'm running, and get away from these snakes. So so then we arrive. Obviously this is where it kind of gets nonsensical. It's like, why did the snake stop chasing me? Everything. So all of a sudden we arrive at the house, his parents' house, and my friend tells me that, I'm telling him, this is crazy, like all these snakes chasing us. And his parents and him said, oh yeah, that's really normal. It's really normal for that to happen. Which I found quite odd in the dream, that they all said that this was normal. Anyways, then the dream kind of does this weird transition where I'm in the house and we're playing, I guess, like a kind of hide and seek. And so my first instinct is to choose this really dark corner. It's kind of like a little hallway, but it's like a little indent in the wall where I chose to hide myself. And so I figured I would camouflage myself very well in this corner, and that I wouldn't be found. But the crazy thing is I was found, and the really weird part was that I was shot with a yellow paintball. And it surprised me that I was still found. But there wasn't too much, like, there was a little bit of anxiety in the hiding, but not too much. And then suddenly, again, the dream transitioned to my friend telling me that there's men at his house, men in uniform. And I remember peeking out through the window of his house and seeing the men in uniform. And it actually looked like the army. The army is the uniform is very similar to the army. And he said, and my friend said to me, "You gotta go. You have to leave. They're gonna come and try to find you, right?" And so I started panicking, and I was trying to think of somewhere to hide, and of course I was thinking about the same spot that I hid before, but I realized that I couldn't hide there anymore, because clearly I was found last time. So this is where the dream gets a little weird, because then it kind of transitions into me hiding in my closet, and except I hide in a I pour my laundry basket over me, right, and I sort of just hide in there, right? Totally nonsensical, but the crazy part was that I didn't get found. They didn't find me, right? They never found me. And so once I brought myself out of the clothing that were on top of me, and I opened my closet door to get out. So all of a sudden I was in my room, and all my stuff were gone, right? And it caused me a kind of a panic, like all my stuff were gone, moved. And then I saw somebody kind of like in the more, you could say, like dining room, well, kind of like, I don't know how to explain it, like, yeah, dining room area. And it was actually my ex, which I found initially very strange. And she was kind of rude to me in a sense. And I was trying to be like, why are you being, rude to me, and so on. And I can tell that she was kind of having these resistances to me. But then I was able to talk her out of her being so upset with me. And this is, and then we ended up engaging in like a sexual act, right? And then basically the dream ends, right? The dream ends. So there's a lot to break down in this dream. And to give some context, last night I was reading, I'm still reading Freud's The Interpretation of Dreams. And I just finished the chapter of how Freud interpreted his own dreams. And so I figured this would be the perfect dream to kind of, why not? It's the most recent dream that I've had, so why not kind of do a self-analysis, a dream analysis on this dream. So if we go back to the beginning of the dream where I'm with my friend in the woods, now I was trying to, it took me quite a while to think about what I first associated with my friend. And actually, the first thing that came to mind when I thought about my friend was Arizona. And funny enough, Arizona is the place that I've been thinking about moving to, right? And because actually my friends have recently moved there as well, right? They left the army, they now living in Arizona. And the funny thing is, my friend here, he's always lived in Arizona, right? So I think he's actually very representative of friends and then Arizona. And then you can kind of see how this is starting to go. So the arrival at the woods is very interesting because it kind of gives this wild atmosphere, this unknown region, and there's a lot of fear in kind of an unknown place, especially like in the wilderness, in the woods. And it really kind of represents itself with the snakes, right? With the snakes chasing me. And the snakes also, some of the first things that came to mind was like, snakes I'm relatively fearful of in general. And also snakes are very convincing, right? And I'll kind of capitalize on this convincing part a little bit further into the dream. So now we're running towards the house, right? And typically house we associate with home. And this is the first thing I associated with, right? So as you can tell, like the snakes, the fear are driving me home, right? It's driving me home. And it's interesting that the distance between me and my friend, it grows. And I just kind of keep an eye on him while I keep going home. And I started thinking about why was this the case? Why did this specific separation happen? And I think it has to do with the fact that him and I had a conversation about, he was asking me if I still wanted to go to Arizona. And I said, well, that's the plan. But at the end of the day, I'm not really sure because, getting out of the army, I'm not really sure. At the end of the day, I feel like wherever I can find a job, that's where I'm going to move. And that's kind of where I ended that conversation with my friend. And so he's like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so now the dream proceeds to arriving at the house, and then my friend and his parents kind of saying that these snakes chasing me is normal. The snakes chasing us is normal. It's a normal thing. I think the one thing you could probably say that my unconscious is trying to say is that this fear, this transition in my life that I'm currently going through or going to go through, right? Because I have about a little less than a year left in the army. And of course, the decision resides, do I stay in the army or do I go outside of the army, right? Do I decide to leave the army? And I've been pretty confident in my decision to leave the army. But it still doesn't take away from the anxiety and the fear that I have in making this decision. And so I think when I hear the parents and my friends saying, oh, this is normal, right? It's kind of like there is some kind of reassurance that this transition that I'm going through with my life, it is kind of normal to feel this fear and this anxiety that I'm currently not wanting to actually confront, right? And if I'm being honest, like I haven't been wanting to think about this that often, but unfortunately, like it's going to happen, right? A response will be demanded to me. Do I stay? Do I go? And I've been pretty confident in my decision so far to leave. So anyway, so now the situation with so now we forward to the house and playing this hide and seek where I hide in a corner. And I think it's exactly that, right? It's my avoidance. I think it's very symbolic of my avoidance of where I'm choosing not to confront the situation at hand. And funny enough, I get caught, right? I get shot. And the yellow paint I was thinking about what the yellow paint I could associate with, and the first thing that came to mind was caution, right? Caution and perhaps slow down, right? These are the first things that I associate with the getting shot in yellow, right? Caution. And I think it's really symbolic of, perhaps maybe you shouldn't be doing this, right? You shouldn't be hiding yourself. You should take caution in this hiding, right? And then so that's what I associate with that. Now, the transition to the men arriving at the house in uniform. I think we already know what that is, right? It's the army trying to take me back, right? And trying to convince me to re-enlist, right? This is the context of the situation, which is very true, right? Lately I've been pushed to kind of re-enlist and they've been trying to convince me to re-enlist and stay in the army, right? And this is very anxiety giving because I don't want to stay in the army. But at the same time, the fear of the unknown is also there. So this dream actually represents twofold fear. It's a twofold fear. It's the fear of staying and knowing that my life will be, miserable in some sense because I'm just not happy with the things that I'm doing currently, right? I'm not content. It's nothing really against the army. It's just not for me, right? Now, but then there's that fear of the unknown. Will I survive? Will I thrive in some way that is flourishing for my own happiness or existence? And so I think the whole scenario, the way the whole dream paints itself is very symbolic, right? Being in the wilderness, being chased by snakes, and sort of, right, driving me home. So I think, and so the men arriving and then my friend telling me to hide, right? I think this further solidifies my decision that I don't want to actually stay in the army, right? I don't want to do this. So I'm willing to hide myself in some closet and pour clothes over me so I'm not found. And so I don't get found. Now, I was thinking about what the clothes in the laundry basket could represent. And I have a very bad habit of doing the laundry and then not putting the clothes away, right? So it's kind of like doing half the work. And this is like the first thing that came to mind. It's like doing the work halfway. And so that means there's still work to be done, right? And so what is interesting here is that I literally hide myself. The unfinished work buries me, right? The unfinished work buries me, but at the same time, it hides me, right? So I started thinking, like, kind of doing these associations. I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? I think in a sense it means that I need to leave the army because there's work that only I can do outside the army, right? And so there is this sense of unfinished business that I have with my own, I guess you could say, my own destiny, right? There's this unfinished business that I must do, that must be done, that can only be done outside the army, right? Okay, so that's how I interpret that whole thing. Now, the thing with my ex, that was very interesting because I found that very, and it was an enigma to me, right? Because the first interpretation, it seems like, oh, well, clearly, I'm lonely. I want someone to be there with me, and so on. And to a sense, that's true. And I think that would be probably a superficial layer of the interpretation of what happened, right? Because, I could say, well, it's true, like I am single, and so on, and all the feelings that come with being single and trying to find someone and all those things, right? I think that would be a fair interpretation to put, But but again, I think that would be a very superficial interpretation, but I think it's still inclusive of, it's still a part of it, right? The second layer, the more layer that I think is more important, is actually what I associate with her. And I started thinking more about this. And so actually, what's interesting about this is that the ex that was in the dream was the ex that that we broke up when I had first joined the army, right? I was in basic training, and her and I broke up there because she couldn't handle the distance. She couldn't handle the distance that was demanded for me to join the army, and so we broke up while I was still in army in training. And this is where I find it very symbolic, because my return to my ex is like my return back to the civilian life, like the life that I had before the army. It's kind of like that return. And so here I'm basically, in a very symbolic way, I'm making love with my decision to return back home, to return back to society, to civilian life, and so on. And the problem is, I'm having a hard time convincing myself of it. But at the end of the day, I commit myself with it in some kind of union type of way. So I think that's the whole breakdown of the dream, and the situations that is coming at hand. So I hope that really breaks down the twofold fear that is going on in my life, and the major transition and the toil that is going on between myself about the army and this unknown that I'm about to experience. But anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed that, and that you guys found it fruitful, with me kind of doing this self-analysis, and how I'm looking at the dream itself, and so on. All right. Thanks for listening.